Good morning. Well, here we are again for Bible study. Thank you and welcome to Bible study with Andre and Betty. We're continuing our studies from the book of Daniel, and today we're in chapter 7. So thank you for viewing and thank you for your words of encouragement and help. So we'll be looking at Daniel's night vision is our focus of today's lesson. In chapter 8 of Daniel, we'll see his morning vision. But this vision is a prophecy, begins the prophetic section of the book of Daniel. And what has happened is the southern kingdom of Israel was taken into captivity under Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And this vision is going to show 4 world empires that Nebuchadnezzar saw in a dream. And for Daniel, it's going to show the prophecy of how the world will come to a close. And in the Revelation, we see the fulfillment of the prophecy given to Daniel. We'll see the fulfillment of that prophecy. And so in the visions of Daniel, it's filled with symbolic language. And the only way to explain symbolic language is for the Bible itself to do the interpretation of the scriptures. So in the first portion of Daniel 7, it will be the vision, and in the second part will be the explanation or the interpretation of the vision. So we begin this morning's study in Daniel chapter 1. And in this first verse, we're looking back to chapter 5, where Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, was king. But in this chapter, it relates the first year of Belshazzar's reign. And then in the 8th chapter, it'll be the 3rd year of his reign. But this first year of Belshazzar's reign is when Daniel has this night vision. So that would be called retrospective to chapter 5, because in chapter 5, there's no time frame given for this king. So in verse 1, it reads, "In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream," and that's what we have here in the scriptures. Daniel's writing of what he saw. So he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. That is how things will end up. Verse 2, Daniel spake and said, "I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea." Now we'll learn in verse 17 that the great sea is speaking of the earth. because these kings reign over the entire populated earth during these times. And then it says in verse 3, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. And the great sea also symbolizes confused mankind living in the earth, and that even now today, the majority of, anyone who is not a believer is living in the midst of chaos, but they're confused about what's going on in the world. So it speaks of the populated earth, the great sea, the populated earth, living under the leadership of kings and emperors, who many of them have not the best interests of the people in mind. And so when Daniel saw the 4 winds of the heavens striving upon the great sea, this is symbolic of the spiritual warfare that exists between the kingdom of heaven, which is God's rule over the earth, and the kingdom of evil, with Satan being the source of all evil, pain, and suffering in the world. That there is this fight between us who are believers and the principalities and powers that rule over the earth. And so Daniel is going to see these 4 world empires, and the first, and also the beast speaks of kings. And this will be explained beginning at verse 15 of this chapter. Verse 4 says, the first, talking about the beast, when it says in verse 3, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, out of the earth, diverse one from another. The first beast was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand up on the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And this shows Nebuchadnezzar as being the lion, and it's showing his rise and his fall, as recorded in chapters 1 through 4 of Daniel. And then Daniel says in verse 5, and behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. And this is a picture of the world empire of Media Persia. And 4 major kings will come out of that empire, as recorded in Daniel chapter 2, verse 39. So this second beast would be the empire of Media Persia. Verse 6. The next empire will be the empire of Greece. So verse 6 says, after this empire no longer reigned, after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Now this is a picture of the Grecian Empire being as a leopard, swift and powerful. And the 4 wings that this beast had, or this empire had, was after the fall of the first king, and when he dies, and secular history says Alexander the Great, after he dies, then 4 other kings and kingdoms are going to rise out of that, which will be Syria, Egypt, Macedonia, which is Europe, and Thrace. And in chapter 11 of Daniel, we'll see during the 400 years of silence, called the Apocryphy, we can study about what happened during the years of the reigns of Greece. And during that 400-year period of silence, when God did not speak to anyone, this is when the synagogues, the Sanhedrin Council, and false, corrupted Mosaic law happened. And so this third empire will divide off itself into 4 kingdoms. And this last kingdom is the Roman Empire, and Rome was reigning when Jesus was born into the earth as a babe. And so verse 7 of Daniel says, after this I saw in the night visions, this is the second time, to let us know that this happened at nighttime. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast. And this beast, picturing the Roman Empire, was dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse, different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And we'll find later in this chapter that the 10 horns are 10 kings that shall rise up nearing the end of the prophecy of the world system coming to its close. Now, this Gentile world empire symbolizes the world system ruling over people and that are all over the world through politics, economics, and religion. And this world system is going to come to a close, and that will picture Daniel's vision of 70 weeks that will be explained in Daniel chapters 8 and 9. And so this fourth beast is the Roman Empire, reigned over by the Caesars. Okay, verse 8 is going to explain, it's going to refer to the 10 kings. So Daniel says, I considered the horns, which are kings, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, and this little horn is a picture of the Antichrist trying to take over God's world, and his end will be in the lake of fire and brimstone. But right now, the little horn is a picture of the Antichrist. Now, I know theologians and commentaries give names to these kings and these people, but I'm just gonna say that person, whomever he was an appearance of Antichrist. And Antichrist simply means opposing the living Christ, in opposition of the true and living God. So there came up among the 10 horns a little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and that would leave 7 kings. And behold, in this horn, this little horn, were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. In other words, speaking as if he's God. And now we're going to see how the coming of the Son of Man in glory is going to take control, even after this Antichrist think that he's going to continue to rule the whole world. So Daniel says in verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. And so this is a picture of the Almighty God, El Shaddai, taking over these other kingdoms that had ruled for these many years. And so verse 10 says, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. And that's a picture of the power of God ruling over his own creation. Thousands ministered unto him, and this is a picture of the saints that will be explained in verse 18. It was 1,000 thousands with an S ministered unto him, the Ancient of Days, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, before the Ancient of Days, a picture of the Son of Man reigning in glory. The judgment was set, and the books were open. And this is when in chapter 20 of the Revelation, the books of the Apocryphy of the Apocalypse are opened, where the dead are judged out of the books that contain the destiny of all unbelievers. So verse 11 says, Daniel says, I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn of the little horn spake. I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. And this is when the beast and the Antichrist was put into the bottomless pit. They were put alive into the bottomless pit, as recorded in Revelation 19, verse 20. And then Daniel says, as concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion or their power taken away. yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. And this is a picture of them, even though they have been placed in the bottomless pit, they are still alive. And this is when Satan will be bound for 1,000 years. So now we see a scene in heaven before the coming of the Son of Man. Daniel says in verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. This is the Son of God coming unto God the Father and being brought close to the Father. Verse 14, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion, or his government, is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And this is talking about the millennial kingdom, where Christ will rule over the entire earth. Now we begin the interpretation of the beast's vision. Verse 15, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me, that we have just been reading. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. And here comes the interpretation. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, and that would be the great sea. But the saints of the Most High, in verse 10, shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And that's when Israel and the sheep nations will be in the kingdom age. Verse 19, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast. This would be the Roman Empire, which was diverse from all others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns, verse 20, that were in his head, and of the other which came up before, whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth and spake great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Verse 21, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possess the kingdom. And this is a picture of the Great Tribulation period, the time of Jacob's trouble, when God at the end of the tribulation will save the nation Israel. Verse 23, thus he said, he's explaining who the fourth beast is. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. Verse 24, and the 10 horns out of the kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. Verse 8 mentioned, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and should subdue 3 kings. And he spake great words. This is the little horn of verse 8. Verse 25. And he shall speak, this little horn shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High during the tribulation period, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. That would be 3.5 years, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Verse 26, but the judgment of the Ancient of Days shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, or his control of the Antichrist, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom, verse 27, and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions or nations shall serve and obey him, that is, obey the Lord. Verse 28, hitherto is the end of the matter, or the sum of the matter, as recorded in 7 verse 1. But Daniel says, as for me, Daniel, my cognitions or my thoughts much trouble me, and my countenance changed in me. But I kept the matter in my heart. And so he continued to think about these things that God had showed him in a vision. And a lot of what God showed him, Daniel does not understand. And at the end of the book, we'll see where God told him that these things will only be understood as for the saints who are living close to the end of this world system. And these visions and prophecies and symbolic language are difficult to understand. And as I've said before, I don't have the ability to make people understand, but I do have a responsibility of sharing with you what God has shared with me. And the Holy Spirit will explain and interpret and teach us the meaning of all these words. So thank you all for listening, and hopefully we will be back again next week. And I say that because Jesus is coming back soon, and we don't know the day nor the hour, but he could come back today, tomorrow, or at any moment of any day. So I'm always looking for him to return. So thank you all for listening, and have a great day and a great week, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Bye.